Hey everyone, in this video, I'm going to take a drive out to my local homebrew store and pick up some ingredients for my next brew day. So let's go. So I always look forward to picking up ingredients for my brew day because I get to go out for a nice spin in my car. So let's talk a little bit about this series. I'm brewing an Altbier. It's a German Altbier, and it was inspired by a fellow YouTuber, The Brew Show. And if you haven't seen my previous video, I put together a building the recipe video, and it goes into detail of how I took The Brew Show's recipe and converted it into a recipe I will be using for my brew day. This video walked you through how I plugged it into a software called Beersmith and really made sure it worked with my brewing system. So I was able to, basically tweak it to work with my electric Homebrew system. And now that I have the recipe, I'm heading to the brew store. So a little bit about the recipe. There's a list here. It has some Munich malt, a Pilsner, Care Munich, Carapils, and Carafa 3. So what I did is I scaled up the recipe to brew a 10-gallon batch of beer. Really, it's going to be a 9.1 gallon batch of beer. My electric brew kettle's 15 gallons. So 10 gallons is really pushing the limit on the volume of beer I can brew on my system. So I scale it down to about 9.5 gallons, and it works well for my 15-gallon kettle. And I'll be splitting this with a buddy of mine, so really I'm going to have about 4 gallons of this Altbier. Well, I'll talk a little bit about the series. Instead of putting together one big brew day, I wanted to put together a series of videos that covered the brewing process, from thinking about what I want to brew, how I put together the recipe, how I prep for the brew day, the actual brew day, the fermentation process, and the actual taste testing. So there's a lot more that goes into brewing beer than an actual brew day. And that's what I like about brewing. And I think of it as kind of like an art and science. The art part is, figuring out what ingredients to use for the beer, and that's what makes home brewing great, is that you can dial in any recipe you want. In home brewing, we're not really focusing on a specific type of beer. So if you miss your numbers, or if the beer doesn't turn out, you're the only one drinking it. You're not trying to make other people happy. So I think that's a real art form, and just learning how the ingredients work together. And if you're new to home brewing, and I was too a while back, you buy kits, you get your feet wet, you get your foot in the door, and you just learn a little bit about the brewing process a little bit at a time. And for me, at one point, I wanted to learn a little bit more of what the ingredients were doing. So I went from extract to all grain, and then I basically all grain for a number of years. And each time I brewed, I tried to learn a little bit more about the brewing process, specifically the ingredients. And I don't claim to be an expert. I try to brew about 5 to 10 times a year. So I'm definitely not brewing at the volume I would need to really understand how all the ingredients work to make a beer recipe. But I learn a little bit each time. So I'll try to learn a little bit about more of the grains and the hops and the yeast strains that go into making each recipe. And each time I brew, I try to learn a little bit more. And I think that's what makes making a recipe so great, and buying the ingredients yourself. Now, if you buy kits, it's not a big deal. The main thing is just go out and try to brew, at least in my opinion. And the other part of it is the science and technology. A lot of my videos it's DIY in nature. I've built the glycol systems and the fermentation chambers and the electric Brewery. I love that stuff. So I think it's a nice balance of figuring out the recipes, figuring out how the equipment works to brew the beer, and just think it's a really cool hobby to do. I'm on my way to my local homebrew store. It's called Keystone Homebrew. So if you're ever in the Pennsylvania area, make sure to check Keystone Homebrew out. I've been going to them for close to 20 years now, and they always have the ingredients, or for the most part have the ingredients on hand that I'm looking for. I think it's important to support your local homebrew stores and make sure that supplies to get for your recipes are available locally. Not saying I don't buy online, but I definitely like buying from my local store. So I'll talk a little bit about my upcoming videos after I get the ingredients. So I plan on putting together a video that basically preps for the brew day. You know, my system is fairly involved. It's the electric Herm system is which I'll be brewing on for this Altbier. So the day before, I'm going to start getting my water together and all the ingredients. I'll get all the the salts to make my water profile. So basically, I'll have everything in place. So when I go out and brew the next day, it's going to be as easy as I can make it. You know, in the past, I try to put together everything to get together while I'm brewing. You can do it, but it's such an easier process if you have everything ready to go the night before. And something I'm trying new this year, I'm going to try a live video, a live brew day. Been investing some time to see how I can actually do a live brew day. So for the actual brew day, I'm going to put together a schedule, and I'm going to try to do it in about 5 or 6 hours. And I'm shooting to do it at around 8 o'clock in the morning and finish it up around noontime. And it's something new, I think new to my channel at least. I am a little worried about carrying a conversation for 4 to 5 hours, but I'll make sure to put in some things in the schedule to talk about. You know, if you have any questions about brewing systems, I definitely can go over the ins and outs of how I put together and use the electric Herm system. It's a system that I really enjoy brewing on. It's labor intensive. You've seen other videos of mine where I compare it to the Anvil all-in-one or brew in the bag. It definitely takes more time to brew on, but I look at it as a challenge. And if you have any questions about that type of system, I'll make sure to have breakpoints within the brew day that I can dedicate a little time to talk about that electric Herm system. But anyways, I'm at the homebrew store now. I'm going to run in. I'm going to grab the ingredients for this Altbier, and we'll get ready for this upcoming brew day. Walking into any homebrewing store always puts a smile on my face. There's something exciting about the smell of fresh grains and the sight of homebrewing equipment. I stopped by the grain milling area and placed my order for this Altbier. I usually crush my grains at home, but honestly, it's just convenient to have somebody else do this sometimes. After that, I swung by the refrigerator and grabbed 2 packets of White Labs Kolsch yeast and picked out the closest variety of spalt hops they had in stock. Once the grains were crushed and I had a few minutes to chat with some fellow homebrewers, I hit the road. All right, I've picked up all the ingredients for this Altbier at my local homebrew store. I'm gonna head back, probably hit a couple back roads and run through the gears a little bit, but I'll see you in my next video where I will prep for the brew day, and then we're gonna have the brew day live, and then a couple more videos to finish out the series. See you next time. Cheers.